Hello? Hey, what's up? How you doing? Hello? Come on, hello. Let's try it one time. Hello? Yeah. All right. Okay, so I've got just 15 minutes, so I have a timer there. Okay, so I have no slides. I'm just going to talk and have my notes here, so I hope I'm able to connect with some people. So hi, I am Toro Orero. I am the managing partner of DDFCapital. We are a Silicon Valley venture capital fund investing in emerging markets with a focus on Africa, backed by Team Tripper, of course. And originally, I'm from Nigeria, so the subject of this talk, referring to emerging markets, will be more Africa-focused, right? And I'm going to be talking about frontier technologies and how they have impacted or how they're going to impact emerging markets. Now, frontier, I'm going to smile for the camera. Frontier technologies, it's a really broad term. So I've decided to narrow it down to some verticals in frontier technologies. And I'm going to talk about AI and robotics because we're in Robotex, right? So yeah, let's get started. So first of all, about AI, I have a little caveat that I wrote down. And AI is an emerging technology, like we all know. And typically, in emerging technologies, I think that we are all learning as we go, and there are hardly any experts in the field. So there are just some people that have done more research than other people and have more time than other people have. So there's something to really think about. I think we're still on the cusp of realizing the true potential of what AI could be, and we don't know what it will be when it has matured. And even within AI, there are subsets of AI. There's machine learning and there's deep learning, and I'm going to be talking about those two subsets of AI. And also to help, I'm going to be talking about use cases because I have just like really limited time, and I can't believe the time moves that fast. Are you fast forwarding this thing? I'm kidding. Fantastic. All right. Okay, so I'm going to zoom into deep learning, artificial intelligence, AI, deep learning, machine learning. So we're moving from a world where we field forms or told experts what to do, and experts or technologies use the forms we field to recommend solutions to us. In emerging markets, well, the world in general, though, but in emerging markets specifically, we're moving from that to systems that observe us and how we interact with the world around us and recommend to us what we should and shouldn't do. And that's just typically deep learning, machine learning in summary. So for example, or before I go to the example, we are, over the last, let's say 50 years, for example, we've transitioned from I'll call it historical AI, which is kind of simulating human intelligence, to what I'll call present AI, which is actually intelligence. The breakthrough happened a couple of years ago with the introduction of artificial neural networks to simulate how the neural networks in the brain happen. And we're going to move over to superhuman intelligence, which is, I think we're probably about 10 years away from. Yeah, and I think it presents a really exciting opportunity for emerging markets because, like we all know, data in emerging markets, well, like I said earlier, focus on Africa is very limited. So how do you use AI to solve problems in emerging markets, in markets where there's hardly any data imputed by the people in those markets? And that's where deep learning comes in and machine learning comes in. And I'll go to two case studies real quick. So there's a company in Nigeria called Minds.io, for example. You can check them out. That's MINES.io. And what they do is they just offer loans to people, right? So typically in the developed market, like I said, the West or Europe or wherever it is, if you want a loan from a bank, what do? You go to the bank or you fill a form online, you present some documents, and they do some due diligence, and they give you the loan, right? But with Minds.io, the data is not there, transaction history is not there for this kind of markets. Credit scores are literally absent. So how do you give a loan, and how do you guarantee returns, right? And what this company does is they use deep learning to study the habits and of how the customer uses your phone, so from transaction records, text messages, phone recharge history, and with that, they're able to predict with a very large amount of accuracy the type of loan that a customer qualifies for. And all the customer does is send a text, right? And literally within seconds, the customer gets the loan. So that's an example of how AI, well, in this case, deep learning, is having significant impact in emerging markets today, not next tomorrow, today. The company I'm talking about just raised a $13 million Series A round a couple of weeks ago. So really great stuff. Another company that's really interesting is actually my startup, for example. I'm in the process of launching an AI startup. And I'm a huge traveler, for example. I have traveled to and lived in 35 countries. This is my first time in Estonia, so my 36th country, and about 74 cities, right? And typically, when you travel, you spend, for people that travel quite a bit, you spend minutes and hours looking for the best flight deals or the flights that have the longest or the shortest layover times, and the dates that the flights are affordable or less, business class or economy class, etc. Then probably spend other minutes looking for like great hotel deals with like good ratings that are probably in the city center because you have some work to do there, or in the outskirts because you want to see the country, etc. Then, if you're an adventurer like me, you come to Tallinn and you have to Google things to do in Tallinn, right? So you discover that the whole process of booking an adventure can take, what, minutes and hours, right? And using AI and deep learning, we're able to significantly shorten that whole process to just 3 taps in 5 seconds. That recommends to you the best flights are suited for you and the best things to do that are suited for you, and all you have to do is book, and everything is booked. So this is how deep learning and AI, I think, are really changing things in emerging markets today as we speak. I'm going to hop off real quick before I come back to AI into robotics, and which is another frontier technology we're seeing really, really huge impacts in. Now, it's personally, right, I have a very broad definition of what robotics is, or what robotics can be, right? So some people, and again, this is frontier technologies, we're still in the early days, I think, but some people probably restrict robotics to robots, right? But I think robotics covers autonomous vehicles. I think robotics covers UAVs, drones, etc. And I'm going to be talking about robotics in those broad terms in emerging markets. So, for example, in about 3 years ago, a country called Congo in Africa, they literally, this is not a joke, they literally put robocops, that is humanoid-type robots, on the streets of Congo to control traffic, right? And you can now see how emerging markets are kind of leapfrogging the conventional way of doing things and just staying in the future and just embracing new technologies, right? Which I thought was really interesting. What that drives home is typically, when you think about frontier technologies and emerging markets, you're probably right that these technologies are not developed in those emerging markets, but the application in those emerging markets, I think, are the key. So people here are working on great stuff. You have really, really big markets in emerging markets because we have receptive markets that are willing to adapt what you're building, et cetera. So, for example, we've heard about the case of mobile money and technologies like that are being adopted in emerging markets. Another example is in the US, for example, we dream. So I'm Nigerian, but I spend my time between Nairobi, Kenya, Lagos, Nigeria, and San Francisco, where our fund is based, and I travel all the while in between. So in San Francisco, for example, we are dreaming of a day when I'll just be sitting down and I'll just probably order something on Amazon, and a drone is going to come and deliver it to me, and I'm going to get like new Nikes, right, with a drone, right? And that's probably about a few years from now. However, today in Kigali, Rwanda, you can literally send a text, right, and you get blood or medical supplies delivered to you. So you can see a situation of accessory versus necessity, right? So I think this presents a really interesting opportunity for people looking to test new technologies and test new ideas, or ideas that have that have already been implemented here, been scaled over to those markets. So when you look at the world map and you look at emerging technologies, you usually see places in Europe, the West, Asia highlighted, and you see the whole part of Africa like really dark. And that's not bad, but I think that there's a huge opportunity to implement those technologies in those emerging markets. Just give me a second. I think, yeah, that's about it. Now, coming back to the subject of AI and robotics and how I think the whole ecosystem can play around, I think we live in really, really exciting times, like we all know. I think people here are probably subject experts in AI or robotics or all the verticals in between. I think we live in very interesting and exciting times, and I think we should look at the future where we are powering those innovations ethically, right? And futures where we're including not subsets of the economy, but the world in general. I have a little saying I joke with my friends that robots will take over the world, but we will be those robots too, right? I think the danger that people keep talking about, Hollywood and the Gloomsday, is we think robots are those people and will be these other people. I think there has to be a hybrid in the future where we have to be one with the robots and have chips implanted, etc. And I think emerging markets play a very interesting role in making that a reality. Now, I'm going to talk lastly I talked about how emerging markets and most of the time are places you can implement these new technologies. I'm going to talk about how emerging markets can drive the innovation of these new technologies. Now, I come from a computer engineering background. I've coded all my life till I went into venture capital. And what happens is this. In a typical Western society, you go to Stanford, for example, you then come to science, have a great degree, etc. But in places like Nigeria, where the CS degrees are not great, what many people do is they go on their own and go on Google and literally learn how to code. So, which is what I did too, so yay. But what happens is you now see people that are not restricted by conventional ways of thinking. And that now presents a really interesting execution dynamic in the global workspace. And I think that's something that the whole world can tap into, and we're seeing real significant progress happening right now with people that are bright-minded and really exponential in the way to think, in the way to solve problems, and the proficiency across multiple programming languages, multiple skills, and you're like, it's just you one guy, how come you know all that stuff? And that's because of the passion to learn, and the internet has democratized that learning ability. So in summary, by the way, if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer. In summary, like I said, as a recap, technology is not developed in emerging markets, may not be present right now, but I think we're probably about 3 to 5 years away from that. As a VC myself, this is a technology we're looking to invest in. We've done some really great investments. I'm doing a startup that's kind of focusing on that area too, looking about 3 to 5 years out. But right now, technologies that have not been implemented, that have not been developed there yet, can be implemented there that are being developed in other markets, like here in Estonia, or in Europe, etc. And that's about it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. We were messing with your time there.
I know, yeah, it was just all over the place.
It was up and down. It was a theory. Oh, it was fantastic.
Yeah.
Oh, good. Do we have any questions for Toro here?
Oh, question.
Oh, we do. The lady over there.
Oh, by the way, before I answer the question, my Instagram or Twitter is Toro Orero, so just hit me up there, and I can answer all the questions you have.
Nice.
Hello there, Toro.
Hey, how you doing?
Hey. Well, I'm representing a company from Netherlands, and we are expert in emerging markets.
Great.
So I think we should give a talk after your presentation, if you don't mind.
Totally.
And I'm wondering, because we supply at this moment 100% infrastructure to Africa. So I'm wondering how you would replace the hardware and the infrastructure that we are currently supplying to build up everything that is now going to artificial intelligence and robotics.
Okay, and what type of hardware is it, if you don't mind me asking? What type of hardware?
It's all about infrastructure, so networking hardware,
Gotcha.
let's say. Everything for the data centers, fiber optics, big firewalls. you name it.
Yeah, great,
Yeah?
great.
Thanks.
Great, cool. Well, thank you so much for the question, and let's totally have a chat after this. I think personally, right? I think Africa is like, if you've never been there, I highly recommend you put it on your bucket list for next year. Just choose an African country and just travel there. It's amazing. It's amazing. Anyway, I'm just gonna shut up right there. So I think when looking at infrastructure plays, we tend. I'll give an example. I'm sorry for taking up your time.
Go ahead. That's what we're here for. John.
I traveled to a really tiny island with a friend of mine, and this person was a typical American. That was his first trip outside the West Coast, literally, which I just thought was dumb. Anyway, so we go there, right? And he's looking for a Walmart, and there's a Walmart, right? And he's looking for a 7-Eleven, and there's a 7-Eleven, right? And it's like, I can't believe there is no 7-Eleven. I can't believe there's no Walmart. And I had to make him understand, and this is the moral of the story, that civilization is subjective, right? And coming back to infrastructure plays on the continent, we can tend to make the mistake of thinking that a place needs X infrastructure for the place to work correctly. So for example, for many years, people thought Africa needed, let's say, a whole bunch of landlines and cables running through homes for the place to be connected. But fast forward like 5-10 years, the whole continent literally leapfrogged and went straight to mobile phones. Right now, there's about 78% mobile phone penetration on the whole continent. So you have people having their first introduction to technology, not through laptops and computers like we have in the West, but through mobile phones, right? So I would say we should think about what the continent could be in 10 years and create infrastructure for that, as opposed to creating infrastructure for now. And when you think about that in the futuristic terms, you now see the really interesting role AI plays in automating most of those processes. And for the infrastructure play, the AI can probably be maybe not a B2C play, but maybe how it organizes some processes. So for example, I heard about a couple of weeks ago that I think Google's deep learning, correct me if I'm wrong, but Google's deep learning algorithm has admin level access to Google servers to optimize energy use, right? So, well, it's good and bad, can be scary, but so that way they're implementing AI to better increase their internal efficiency to serve customers better. So I think there are multiple ways to play that, futuristically speaking. That was such a long answer, jeez.
It's a good one, though. It's a good answer.
Okay, I think I'm out of time, and any other questions, just hit me up on Twitter, and I'll have to chat. Thank you very much.
Please, round of applause for Toro. Thank you, sir.
Thanks. Right.